everyone, and welcome to today's session of Amrita Cafe. A good discussion increases the dimensions of everyone who takes part in it. At Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, we aspire to join hands with institutions, parents, and guardians to provide value-based education and mold the character of the younger generation through a system of wholesome learning. Amrita Cafe aims at serving as a forum to table these challenges and explore the solutions to cope up with the current education scenario. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Ms. Nidhi for joining us in today's discussion. 15 years of work experience in the field of human resources training, development, and counseling, and she also delivers behavioral training in the form of counseling and life skill workshops. So let's quickly jump to today's discussion. Today's topic is how to think. So in schools, they do not teach us any method of thinking, like how to think. And it's not something that can be learned, like it is something that can be learned, but not something that can be taught. So Nidhi, like how can someone learn to think? As it cannot be taught by someone, so how can they learn and what is your take on it?
Hi Nija, and thank you for having me today. And I hope today's discussion would be useful for students, parents, and everyone who is listening to us. So I just want to make a little correction. Like you said that nobody teaches us how to think, and this is a skill which cannot be taught. Now, if we are calling it a skill, then any skill can be taught. But the thing is, in our current education scenario, we focus, the whole of the education system is designed in a way which enhances our emotion, our IQ, which is our intelligent quotient, right? And even our examination system is designed in a way to check the level of IQ of a student. So IQ is a very important skill which we learn in school, and it is only by IQ that we can produce good engineers, doctors, and scientists. But then there is another different skill set, which is EQ, emotional quotient, right? Now, EQ is equally important, and critical thinking is the foundation over which a healthy EQ can be built. Now, the thing with education system is that the whole focus is on producing good quality engineers, doctors, and scientists, which is of course important for and necessary for development of any communities, country, and society. But at the end of day, even that scientist or doctor or engineer is a human being, right? So the distinction between IQ and EQ would be IQ is a skill set which allows us to do our work in a very good manner, but EQ is that foundational skill which helps us to apply that IQ in the most effective. Because if you talk only of IQ, even artificial intelligence and computers, they have very good IQ, but they are not similar to human beings, right? All the doctors, engineers, they're also human beings. And if we are talking of human beings, we are essentially talking about emotions. All our desires, needs, motivations, our thinking pattern, everything is governed by our emotions. Another misconception that I come across is that the word emotional intelligence, usually people confuse it with being very sentimental and emotional. And therefore, these words do not hold a very good impression in other people's mind. Like, why do we want to learn this skill? Or we are already too emotional, and Indians particularly are very emotional. There's no, we are already well equipped with this skill. So there are lots of misconceptions. So I would like to clarify them one by one. First of all, emotional intelligence means being aware of whatever is happening in your mind. And mind is sum total of many cognitive functions: your language, learning capabilities, your imagination, your creativity, your thinking, your feelings, your behaviors, everything. So being aware of what is the basic constituent of your mental design, and being aware of how other people are made up, and then responding effectively. That is what emotional intelligence is all about. In order to develop emotional intelligence, the most fundamental skill is critical thinking. And there comes the role of critical thinking. Like, If I ask anybody, they will know what to think. If I give them any topic, children or students or even adults, they are able to share whatever their thoughts and their previous learnings are about it, about that topic. So they know what to think. But if I ask them to think in a different manner, from a different perspective, most of the time people are not able to think beyond what they already know. The thinking pattern becomes very repetitive. It is almost a repetition of all our past conditioning, all our past knowledge. Now critical thinking enhances our creativity skills, our problem solving skills. It improves our curiosity, and it kind of opens door to imagination and creativity. Now imagine a world where all doctors, scientists, engineers, they have good IQ, but they also have this critical thinking ability where they can be imaginative and creative in their ideas and ways, where they know how to deal with their own emotions and with emotions of other. So we are talking of creating a wholesome humanity wherein and it also addresses the most pertinent questions of our time, which is mental health. It's extremely important to have a decently developed emotional intelligence to be able to handle our life and handle the uncertain situations of our lives in a graceful manners. And therefore, critical thinking is one of the most important fundamental basic steps which helps us to develop emotional intelligence and which helps us to live a more meaningful and purposeful life.
Okay. So Nidhi, like in this current educational scenario where everything is keep on changing and it is affecting the students as well as the teachers' lives a lot. So does critical thinking play an important role in the life of an educator?
We cannot categorize that certain skills are useful only to students or to doctors or not to educators. I'm talking of whole humanity as a whole. And because we are talking about Amrita Vidyapeetham, wherein this setup is a beautiful institution wherein the interaction between students and teachers happens in the most open and healthy way. And I have seen many of the videos of Amrita Vidyapeetham, and my idea about it is that you in this institute. Open conversations are encouraged, which is extremely important for students to explore their world. See, in current scenario, you talked about educators. Now, be it student or an educator, in today's scenario, everybody is bombarded with unlimited amount of information from internet and social media. Now, what exactly are we going to do with that amount of information? Right, our mind has become like a garbage box and we keep storing so much of information. What do we do with that information? Even even if you're an educator or a housemaker or a student, eventually if you're not able to make sense of the information that your environment is providing you, there is no point of keeping on accumulating. Now, if we talk specifically about educators, research clearly showed, and in recent time of pandemic, there have been multiple research which continuously have proved that at least 1 out of 3 educators have felt highly stressed during these times. Now, the numbers are very similar to other fields as well. The research have been done on medical workers and police officers and other professions as well. So, level of stress overall has been higher in last 2 or 3 years, but particularly educators because of whole online thing and everything. So, the challenges that educators faced were there were different kind of challenges that they faced. A It is a different situation when you are managing your student in a classroom, which is a very closed and controlled environment, because you're able to make eye contact with them. The body language is a big giveaway. The body language of your student can make you understand if they're losing interest or if they're understanding, and then they ask question and there is an open interaction. So it's a very different set of control environment, right? But in online mode, the pattern which was observed across country. I can talk specifically about India, wherein teacher to student ratio is like really high. I mean, one teacher is taking care of at least 40, 50, 60 students. So half the time, three-fourths of the class does not open their videos. So where is the question of eye contact? Now people have their own valid reasons. Sometimes it is network issues. Sometimes even students are not very comfortable with technology and there can be other glitches. But all in all, that feel of classroom, that feel of being able to connect with your teacher, connect with your student has completely gone for a toss. Now, uh, the dilemma that the educator in these times face is that at the end of the day, even teaching is a goal oriented activity. You have your targets to meet, right? When you are not able to see what three-fourths of your student are doing, if they're sleeping, if they're sitting properly, if they even have they just put on their laptops and are they even present on their seat, so it becomes very difficult to keep a tab. So the efficacy definitely goes down. This was one challenge. Another challenge that educators also faced was that many of the educators were not well versed with technology. Teaching in classroom is one thing, that was their forte, blackboard, whiteboard, or smart classes. But then, there are so many softwares, they have to well verse themselves in those software, and then they have to prepare assignments on those softwares. So that was one of the different challenges that they faced, particularly in initial 6 7 months of the lockdown, which also invariably increased their level of stress, and maybe for a while the overall efficacy of their classroom might have dipped. So these all factors contributed to their stress levels. Plus there was job uncertainty. Many of the schools have just packed so many teachers, and many of the teachers have quitted because they could not take the stress, and of course the corona time, pandemic time was hard on everyone, right? So that dual responsibility of household, of keeping yourself updated with the technology and not knowing what your student is listening and understanding, it kind of contributed to the overall stress levels of educators as well. So now the question is, how can critical thinking or emotional intelligence help educators in this scenario? So see, the basic thing about life is that no matter in which profession we are, we do make decisions on day-to-day basis, right? We all have our goals we want to achieve. So if we are talking of decision making, if we are talking about goal setting, if we are talking about interacting with people around us, everybody has some sort of interpersonal relationship skill. They form relationships with others. And also the kind of relationship we have with ourselves, the kind of internal chatter that we have of ourselves. It all depends upon quality of our thoughts. So for a critical thinker, what happens is they have an advantage that they can objectively and rationally look into facts and then make their decisions. For a person who does not know anything about critical thinking, they are doomed to repeat cycles, and they keep repeating similar mistakes again and again, hoping for different results, and nothing new comes out of it. And not being able to think about the different scenarios of your life in a critical way eventually will increase the cognitive distortions and cognitive dissonance. Cognitive distortions, you can understand it like this, that we create false statements in our head. For example, I deserve this. I must always be obeyed, or I must always be loved, no matter what. Everybody should be loyal to me. Everybody should treat me with certain respect. And when our realities do not match those internal statements that we have internalized, it causes unnecessary stress and distress in our life, right? So these statements that we keep repeating with ourselves, that this is what I deserve, this is how it should be, this must be done, this must, should statements, they create cognitive distortions in our thoughts. And these kinds of statements, if you look properly, are heavily loaded with our emotions and expectations. They have nothing to do with the realities of our life, right? So people who lack critical thinking will eventually find themselves getting delusional thoughts, getting distorted, having a distorted sense of reality, and all in all, their capability to uh, understand life and take unforced and take, like, what do you call it, some unexpected events of life goes down drastically. On the other hand, any person who's critical thinker will take things as they are, will look into facts and not get stuck in opinions, and is better equipped to handle the uncertain situations of life. If educators are critical thinkers, if I'm an educator and I have critical thinking capability in me, so in the time of pandemic, there was so much of uncertainty around me. I would have been in a better position to deal with those uncertain situations. But if I'm not a critical thinker, those uncertain situations would have resulted in a lot of anxiety and stress in me. So this is how critical thinking relates even with educators.
Great. Thank you so much, Nidhi. So, Nidhi, like, can you just suggest few practices that educators can follow for a better mental health and to reduce the stress that they have these days?
Yes. So, Nija, it has to be a both-sided approach, not just educators. I mean, the first and foremost step would be to share these tips with educators, and they should practice them in their own life. And in turn, they should also teach their students how to be critical thinkers, how to be more emotionally aware about their own needs and requirements, and how to reduce the stress levels of their life. So, if we talk about the methods or ways how to inculcate these habits so that our stress level goes down, the first and foremost thing that comes to my mind is asking a lot of questions. Now, it may come as a surprise because as teachers, we are trained to answer the questions and not ask questions, right? But I'm not talking about that limited scenario of a teacher and student interaction. I'm talking about a person in general. Whenever there is a new situation or any circumstances that comes to you, ask a lot of questions. Usually what happens is our mind develops shortcuts. I'll give you an example. For example, if as a child I was bullied by, say, some very tall and curly haired boy. So as a child, if I'm bullied by a person who's tall and curly haired, chances are high that growing up here I'll avoid any tall and curly haired person, because my mind has formed that defense mechanism, or a kind of safety net. Stay away from such person, they're harmful. And now that I'm a fully grown adult, if I form that stereotype that all tall and curly haired guys are dangerous, that is a typical stereotyping. That kind of thinking might have helped me as a child to avoid problems in my classroom, but basing all my life decisions on these parameters or stereotypes is not going to be the best thing for me. So, what we do is, when we are not critically thinking, we are generally following these shortcuts and stereotyping life, right? So, for an educator or for any person, the first thing is to ask lot many questions. Does this situation, like if somebody comes to me and they're tall and curly hair, then I need to ask myself that, is this person actually dangerous? Are there any similarity between this person and the person who have bullied me in my childhood? Should I allow my preconceived notions and ideas to come in between my judgment? And ask these questions and try to look into that situation through a multiple perspective and not just your perspective. Why have they come? What is the reason that they want to speak with me? And I've just simplified a situation. So the first and foremost thing is asking a lot of questions and not giving into that temptation of falling into that, the already grooves that our minds have formed. So the first judgment that comes is usually not the right one, because they are the conditioning of the past. So it's important to create a gap between your first reaction and your response. So reaction, reaction, you're just repeating the same action again and again. Response is just waiting, staying with that problem, not in a hurry to reach conclusion. Now what happens is, particularly with students, I have noticed that you ask them a question and they're in a hurry to give answers because they want some sense of closure, just conclude it and be done away with it. So that ability to stay with the problem for a while and to just play with it. What is this problem? Why do I think this is a problem or challenge for me? That ability to stay with that problem, you're losing it. And it applies to everyone, not just students. Students particularly are a reservoir of energy, and I call them unguided missiles. If you don't guide them, they may land anywhere and are highly destructive. So it's important to give them that why and how. So it applies to every person. Whenever there is a situation in life, just ask questions, stay with that problem, do not be in a hurry to reach conclusion, and then look into the facts of the situation rather than going with predefined opinions and your cognitive distortions. So that should help. These are the 3 or 4 shortcuts to develop more critical thinking.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nidhi. So that's all we have for today. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing us these valuable thoughts. And thank you everyone who have joined us for this session of Amrita Cafe. So we will meet for another session of Amrita Cafe next week. Till then, have everyone have a good evening. Thank
Thank
you.
you.